Hello, my name is Michael Lynch. I'm a distance learning student at UAH in the Software Engineering Master's Program. Uh, Coming to you today just to tell you a little bit about my experiences in distance learning there at UAH. As you might guess, DL presents a sort of unique set of challenges and issues that you might run into, and so I'm hoping to maybe just give you a few tips and tell you a few obstacles and kind of help manage your expectations if you're thinking about going into a program like this or this specific program itself. Just a little bit about me. Like I said, I'm a DL student. I live in Tennessee, about 50 miles from UAH. I'm in my third year of this program. I'm actually in my last class right now, so I'm nearly finished. So I kind of have a decent amount of experience in the program to kind of tell you how it goes. So hopefully just a few tips here, and maybe it'll help you along your way. Okay, so just a few tips that I'll list here, just some things that I thought about that helped me along the way. The first is just basic time management, study habits, and how you watch class. It's kind of important. This is probably the biggest difference between traditional school where you're in class with the professor asking questions right there, and on a regular schedule. You're normally following a very rigorous schedule as opposed to doing this at home. So the most important thing is that you still need to schedule your time. Just because you're at home doesn't mean that you just kind of do things whenever you want. I found that it helped me a lot to try to make a schedule when watch class on the day it's actually happening, and as close to when it actually happens in the real class as you can. That just sort of helps with staying in sync with the class. When you ask questions, I found that professors are more responsive when you kind of are able to get them while they're still at work for the day. Another thing may help is to try to keep some kind of home office or a separate room for studying and watching class. I think that just sort of having that little sanctuary where you go to study kind of helps, especially if you have little ones at home or a spouse, just to kind of they know you're studying when you're in that room doing that kind of thing. Again, if you do have children, I haven't until very recently, but some other people that have gone through this program with me have suggested that it helps to watch class after they go to bed. So you may sort of experiment with that on your own. Another thing I found was keeping notes digitally, either in Word documents, or I actually found Microsoft OneNote to be somewhat helpful. It's kind of like Word if you haven't used it. Really easy to type notes and keep up with all the different lectures and be able to go back. It just helps to have that digitally. Especially again if you have a laptop or something like that for when you're traveling, or if you're just having to study in a coffee shop or away from home or whatever the case may be. If you have those notes somewhere accessible online, that kind of thing, it helps tremendously because you can always get to it that way. I mentioned some tips that I got from another person. Another tip I may have for you is if at all possible, go through the program with people you work with or people that you know in your area. I actually happened to go through it with 4 other people at my workplace, and that helped tremendously. Just in asking questions when or when you have issues. Sometimes they can help you, just like in a real class when you're in a classroom. You can lean over and ask somebody what the professor say, or hey, I was sick last week. What went on? That sort of thing. So that one's really invaluable. Another thing I mentioned earlier that I'm in my third year. I would expect this to take about 3 years, without a doubt. This program at UAH, at least so far, is not really geared toward full-time enrollment. We were actually the first set of students coming through for the Software Engineering Masters, and you really couldn't get more than about 2 classes at a time, which is not really a full graduate load. And actually I found that, like most distance learning students, if you're working full-time as well, that 2 classes will start to impinge upon your free time. One's not so bad, you can kind of work it in, but when you take 2 classes at once, that really does kind of cause you to have to sacrifice some other things. So I doubled up a couple times. Those were some of the harder semesters that I had, but of course it does pay off. It gets you done a little faster, but that 3-year mark's kind of hard to shave off too much. And the other part of that is take a class every time you can, every semester, even the summer if you can. The summer semesters can be a little bit brutal because they're abbreviated, and especially when you're working full time, and summertime for a lot of people in this area is full of outdoor activities, those kinds of things. But you still got to find time for studying, and I found that summer semester to help a lot, just to try to keep going there. So another tip, just sort of general, the way professors interact. A lot of professors will actually give you a little bit of extra time compared to in-class students. That helps if you're working, that kind of thing. You really do have less time on your plate to dedicate to school. So having an extra 2 or 3 days is really critical. So really use that time to your advantage. Don't put things off, but try to do an hour of work each day or something like that. I mean, try to work in all the extra time that you have to do the best work that you can, because you probably are distracted with the rest of your life since you're not a full-time student, most likely. That said, not all professors do give you extra time. There are a few that I had that treat you just like an in-class student, and so when those professors come along, you just sort of got to roll with the punches and really work hard to stay up with everything. So another little professor question is, question you may have with professors is, how do I ask questions during class? And that can be a challenge too. This kind of goes back to what I said earlier about trying to keep up with class, watching on the day of, those kinds of things. It helps to use multiple forms of communication. Make a phone call, while they're still in the office. You can still grab them. Most of them are there till 5 or 6 at night, and you can usually get a hold of them. Those kinds of things are critical. Don't just email. Of course, that's sort of the go-to, but don't just email. Use multiple forms. Make sure that they get back to you, because it's easy for them, I think, to forget that you're out there, in cyberspace. So, really, you have to stay in touch and be persistent in order to get your questions answered. Another topic to kind of tell you about is advising. It's critical that you meet with your advisor right at the beginning of your program. I found that to be extremely important because I ran into a couple snags early on with how they thought I was enrolled and registered and all that kind of thing. Do it in person if possible. I'm 50 miles from campus, so it was possible for me to go there one day and actually sit down with an advisor and really get things sorted out. That face-to-face conversation is kind of always a lot easier than trying to do it over phone. Advisors can help you align your program of study with your interests. The DL office can help you with that too. The normal master's program will offer a number of courses each semester, but usually only 1 or 2 will be offered through distance learning. So working with your advisor in the distance learning office early can help you to get courses offered that you really want to take, that are really your interests. There are a lot of electives that you'll have an opportunity to take in the software engineering masters, and making sure that those electives fit your interests. It can only be done if you make those wishes known, and these people will actually go work really hard for you to try to get courses available for you. The other part about advising I found really helpful and critical that you go talk to them early about is if you are interested in doing a thesis, start talking about it right at the beginning. I actually did not wind up going through the thesis option, but I talked at length with a number of professors about it, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. But it is critical that you get that interest known really far in advance, because it is going to be a little bit extra challenging to do a thesis through distance learning, and letting them know that up front can only make that easier. So I'll talk to you a little bit about the thesis issue real quick. One important thing to know is that there are actually 2 software engineering master's programs at UAH. One's offered by the computer science department, the other's through the computer engineering department. And depending on which department you're in, that can actually affect which advisors and those kind of things that you're able to work with, or at least there's some limitations in how that works. As I was explaining it, the distance learning masters for software engineering is only the ECE electrical and computer engineering master's program. So you may be able to, your mileage may vary there a little bit, but that was at least the way it was explained to me at the time. That means that if you're working with a computer science faculty member, that things are a little bit complicated. You can use that advisor as a thesis advisor as long as you have people or your committee chairs from the ECE department. That's the way it was explained to me. Doesn't mean that it's impossible to do that, but it just means that it's a little more complicated in determining who your advisors are going to be and who your committee chair will be, all that kind of thing. Your program of study may not be real well defined in that case as well, because the program of study as it's discussed online for the distance learning MSSE is for the ECE department. So if you were going through the CS department, it's a little unclear to me what the program of study would actually look like. Your advisor, it's really important, your advisor needs to share your interests. I mean, you're going to write a very detailed thesis, and it's going to you're going to have to rely on your advisor and their expertise in a very specific area to get that thing written. And so it could make a big difference between the two departments with how your interests align. And once again, that's why it's so important to get that thesis conversation started early if you're interested in doing that, so you can start making those connections, start talking to people, start trying to find somebody that's willing to work with you. On to discussing Software Engineering Studio now. This is a big piece of your master's program. It's actually a 2-semester sequence that you take. It means they're usually a fall and spring semester right side by side. And it's basically a big group project where you're actually going to be a software engineer, write a piece of software, have a real customer that is dependent on your work, all that kind of thing. Distance learning really complicates this, and in my case, I'll say, because I had some coworkers that were going through this program with me, that made it a whole lot easier because we actually wound up being the group. But doesn't mean it's not possible if you don't have coworkers or somebody else close by. But regardless of whether you've got coworkers or not, distance learning does complicate this sequence of courses. For us, with the professor that we had, class participation was done via telephone. Every day that we had the normal in-class session. Whereas most DL classes, you watch a video at home, it's on your own time. This was actually on a fixed schedule set by the professors, just like everybody else in the class. And in-person demos were required. Our professor actually drove up here since we were about 50 miles away to show him our work. We made a lot of videos and posted them on YouTube to kind of show him progress through the semester, that kind of thing. But regardless of what your situation is and how you arrange things with your professor, it's likely that you will have demos, you will have frequent communication, frequent check-ins, those kinds of things. And that can be really hard if you're not geographically located near campus. Of course, this being the 21st century, there are a lot of tools for online collaboration, and so it's really critical that you learn some of those tools, really master them, really find some good ways to communicate, not just with project briefs and demos and things like that, but also just simple code. I mean, you need to be able to collaborate with others on code. Things like Google Code and GitHub are just invaluable tools for that kind of work. You may be assigned with students in class who are going to be able to do the demo there, in class or something like that. But even if that's the case, you're going to have to collaborate somehow, and most likely you're going to need some pretty good tools to do that. All that said, your mileage may vary. I mean, based on the project that you're working on, the professor that you have, this course could be very different. It was one of the most, in my opinion, rewarding classes that we did, that I did in this program. You're actually practicing as a software engineer. It felt very much like my normal day-to-day job. I mean, you're going to write a full piece of code, document it, demo it for a customer, take in requirements and change them into working code, all that stuff. So, it really is important that you get some way to make this class work for you through distance learning. And like I said, I think the biggest piece of that is just the tools and the communication that you choose to have take place. On to maybe the most important thing that I found through my 3 years in this program is support structure. You've got to have a great support structure to get through a program like this. That means your employer, your family, your spouse, all of those things. Your employer is going to have to most likely proctor your tests. Somebody's going to have to be there to make sure that you're being honest on the tests and taking them without any books or anything like that in the room. they're going to have to give you time off for going to project demos, or call into Software Engineering Studio, or whatever the case may be, go see an advisor. All those things, your employer's going to be flexible. So it's really important that your employer has a vested interest in you completing your master's like I did. I mean, they really wanted me to get it done, and so they were totally behind me anytime I needed to take time off or do anything for school. And then the biggest piece of the support structure, of course, I think, is your family, your spouse if you're married. For me, my wife was always very supportive with letting me get away to the office to go watch class, go do homework, go work on projects, go to my buddy's garage to finish our big project for the engineering studio course. All those things are just really critical, and you can't really get this program done without having people behind you supporting you, because it really is going to take up a lot of your time outside of work, and that means a lot of other things in your life are going to have to take a back seat while you're focusing on school. So that's why I really thought support structure might be the most critical thing for completing the program successfully. So I hope this has been helpful in getting you to understand and kind of have an idea for what this program might be like if you decide to take it on, or if you're already sort of in the early stages of it. Again, just the key pieces are that it just really does require a lot of self-discipline. You really need a great support structure to make sure that you're disciplined, make sure that you're not distracted, and really rely on the staff at UAH, particularly in the DL office, your professor, advisors. Those people are really helpful in getting you through this program and guiding you through it, and you really have to communicate a lot in order to make this thing happen successfully. So good luck to you, and I hope you've enjoyed the video. Thanks.